Hello, this is Jack Tyler, and in the podcast that's about to play for you, I'm going to be discussing the chain of doom. The chain of doom is what takes place when an indoor cat somehow gets outside. It's a sequence of things that happen, and if the chain isn't broken, it will end badly for the cat. Understanding the chain is key to being able to break the chain. And I'm also going to be discussing my invention, the cat flasher robot Locator, and how it breaks the chain. And so hopefully this will be informative for you. Thanks for watching. In the USA, on average, 800 indoor cats permanently vanish every day. And we hardly ever find their bodies, alive or dead. On the rare times that we do find their bodies, starvation is the cause of death. What really is happening to these cats? We fortunately do know very well what is happening. The chain of doom describes the terrible situation that is experienced by an indoor cat that somehow gets outside. It is a sequence of events that will ultimately end in the death of the cat if the chain isn't broken. The chain of doom shouldn't be regarded as a morbid concept, but as a neutral scientific theory. It is telling us exactly what is happening to a lost indoor cat, thereby giving us the chance to counteract an impending disaster. With indoor cats, we have this wonderful science, unlike with outdoor cats that go missing where there's nothing comparable. Finding an outdoor cat is a very crude art form at the moment. When an indoor cat does get outside, he or she will quickly, sometimes instantly, revert back to their natural instincts. They will quickly run off and hide, and even when they hear their human parents calling out for them, they won't respond or leave their hiding place. They prefer to hide underneath the buildings. Egresses to get under buildings are easily found by following the trails of varmints and other cats. In 8 days, hunger will drive them out of hiding in the middle of the night, and when it's very quiet, they will search for food. They're in very bad shape as a result of that 8 days of starving, and only rarely will be able to get enough food to avoid reaching the point of no return. After that, they go back under a house and starve all the way. As I mentioned, in the very rare times that their bodies are found, starvation was the cause of death. So presumably that's how it ends for most, if not the vast majority of them, because we hardly ever find their bodies. This even though they clearly knew themselves to be in the vicinity of humans. Apparently, they continue right to their death, all the while deliberately avoiding humans. So why does this happen? Pound for pound, there probably isn't anything tougher than a cat. However, there's a terrible gap in their instincts versus the dangers of suburbia. Common terms like domestic cat and feral cat are bad terms to use because cats were never really domesticated. They're all wild. You know, in the distant past, humans went from being hunter-gatherers to being agricultural. When they did this, they had to store grain, which attracted mice and rats that ate the grain. And that was a big problem for humans. Then came the cats that don't eat grain but do eat mice and rats. Then came kittens, and humans love kittens, and kittens love humans, and that's right where we are today. Very little has changed. I do think that cats, like dogs, have experienced an increase in intelligence from living with humans, but that's all that has changed. In my opinion, cats and lions are very similar. They form the same sort of matriarchal societies. So let's say you adopt a 12-week-old kitten and you raise him or her to a 4-year-old adult. That is the same as if you went to the Serengeti and saw an orphan lion cub and took him or her home and raised him or her to an adult. Hopefully we're enlightened enough where nobody today would do this, but others have in the past. The lion ends up being just like any house cat that you can pet or do anything with. But surely you wouldn't call a lion raised like that domesticated, would you? For that same reason, it's wrong to think of your cat as domesticated. The thing that makes your cat frail in the face of suburban danger is that obviously your cat has no instincts to prepare him or her to cope with those vast dangers. Instinctively, they do know to be very careful of other cats, and that's good, because if they didn't know that, they would be killed very quickly, same as if they're lions on the Serengeti. And like every mammal, cats are instinctively cautious of humans, which is normally good for mammals, but it's a disaster for your lost cat. Cats that normally live outdoors have had time to learn to relate to suburbia, but your indoor cat must rely on pure instinct. So that explains the origin of the chain of doom. Let's take that example of the 12-week-old kitten that I mentioned, raised to a 4-year-old adult. Let's say further that this is your cat and she has never been outside except for trips to the vet while inside of a kennel. Your cat will enter the chain of doom if and when she ever gets outside for any length of time. If you question this, you should go on to the Craigslist ads for some large area such as Orange County, California, where I live. Look in the Lost and Found and you will see the lost cat ads where people often describe what has happened to their indoor cat who is now lost. Those cats, who come from what is probably the same situation as your cat, have entered the chain of doom. And sadly, in the USA, on average, 800 indoor cats finish all the way to doom every day. They're never seen again, and as I mentioned, the best evidence is that those cats did starve to death, probably right in close proximity to humans who could have saved them if they had known that it was an emergency. The chain can sometimes be broken by a layperson who is willing to put in an effort to educate themselves on what to do and then put it into action. So what else can we do about it? One thing that has been suggested in the past is to get your indoor cat to associate humane traps with food. There was a time that I thought this was a good idea, but I no longer do. I had a case a while back where I ran into a cat that was able to beat a humane trap. He or she could go into the trap and get the bait and back right on out of it without touching the trip plate. Like I mentioned, they're getting smarter. If your indoor cat gets outside and enters the chain, and if you don't find his or her hiding place, your next step will be to put into action something called the vortex, and I'll talk about that in another video. And that involves humane traps, and we don't want your cat familiar enough to know or to quickly be able to learn how to beat a trap. If that happens, the vortex will completely fail to break the chain, and you're really in a fix then. What else can we do? GPS systems will never be of any use for lost indoor cats. You can't get a signal where cats go. It'd be the same thing as trying to put a GPS on a possum or something like that. They go underground, that just blocks all radio frequency signals. I talk about that in another video. Microchips are useless also. As I mentioned, we're never going to find their bodies. However, you can put a cat flash or robot locator tag on your indoor cat. That is my invention, and I'd like to talk about that briefly here. It's something that is very convenient, and you don't really ever have to think about it. You just change the battery every 6 months, and it will monitor the temperature when it gets cold, because an indoor cat is nice and cozy inside. When it gets cold out, the cat flasher assumes that it's an emergency and sets off its SOS signal. And that gives away your cat's position, so you'll find her quick. So you just need a little luck. And, and it's an SOS signal, so it can be seen from far away. And it'll keep going once it sets off till its battery is exhausted. So that is enough to break the chain of doom. And I hope all of this has been informative for you. And thank you. And good luck if you've lost your cat, and I'm available for consultations and possibly to go out into the field too if that interests you. Thanks for listening.